welcome back. Happy Sunday morning to the Hitting the Apex post race show here. The Dutch GP just ended, and of course, just leading the way was another dominating performance by Max Verstappen in that Red Bull. Just absolutely unbeatable. Looks like he's just going to be unbeatable for the rest of his career at this point. But to be honest with you, obviously we're all disappointed and very well. At least Tifosi is embarrassed by the way that the Ferrari came out here and performed this weekend. Solid finish by Leclerc, finishing in the podium, but that was due to a very Ferrari-esque type error that Mercedes made with Lewis Hamilton, I think. So it was interesting to see the podium is Verstappen, George Russell, who drove very well today, and then Leclerc in P3. So, Vish, what's your take on, by the way, a very wacky, weird race. Probably the
Yeah.
weirdest race of the season so far, right?
Yeah, and usually, like when you get safety cars and all, they actually make the race a little bit more exciting because it punches
Right.
the field up. In this case, it might have kind of ruined it because Mercedes, what happened is Ferrari and Red Bull both guessed the other ones would start on soft, so they started on softs to not lose the advantage. Didn't even think about the Mercedes. The Mercedes starts
Yep.
on the medium, turns out to be the right tire, and you can one stop. So all of a sudden, Mercedes has a little bit of control over the race because they're on the right strategy. Now, what we missed out on, which would have been, I feel, much more exciting than what ended up happening, is had the Sonoda virtual safety car not happen and then the Bottas safety car, Max would have had to pit, come out behind both Mercedes, and then chase them down. Um, and I think he would have done it and won anyway, to be honest. He had so much pace in that car. Like you said, he was dominant all weekend.
Yeah.
But that would have been much more exciting to see than like hopping them in the pit stops or so
Was
so
that Sonoda issue a
I
little
mean
sketchy
that
for
is
you?
some sketchy. That
Yeah.
is we talk a lot about like why is AlphaTauri there? Like why are they allowed to kind of be the second team and just the way it unfolds. In fact, okay, so I'll defend them and say it's sketchy because they actually could have just that initial time he parked it,
Right.
they could have just said get out of the car.
Yeah.
And if they did that, it's a safety car right then and there. So first they did and I was actually surprised they told him to drive it back to the pits because I was like, you have an opportunity here to cause the safety car. And then they drove it back to the pits. So I was like, oh, fair play to them. They did the responsible thing, even though it would have helped Max to leave him out there to have him cause the. They spent 30 seconds in the pits messing with his tires, messing with his seatbelt, and then they sent him back out. And like literally right as he leaves the pit line, they're like, stop the car.
Yeah.
It
So
does feel a lot
that was
like
sketchy to me. Like, what are you
that.
doing
That
in
does that
for
does
30 seconds?
that feels shady.
Yeah.
That the parent team was kind of like, what the why'd you pull him in? Because he legitimately I think had something wrong with his car. That's why he parked it.
Right.
And so, like I said, AlphaTauri very well could have just said retire the car right then. But after they did the whole thing of bringing him out to the pits to send him back out after he'd been sitting in the pit lane for that long as well, like his race is done. There was no value to sending him back out. And
Well,
then he immediately parked it.
let me ask you this, and I just want to go to like the other cars, right? To Mercedes and Ferrari. When he first had the issue, obviously they said, okay, there's going to be a virtual safety car, and
Or a full
Ferrari
safety car looked
or a
like
full
where he had
safety
parked it,
car,
yeah.
right? And so Ferrari brought in Leclerc. He switched.
Well,
He
no,
pitted.
they didn't initially. So they came out onto they definitely got screwed a little bit in that change.
Right.
So all like Red Bull brought like Max's crew came out. Several crews came out, and then when they saw he started going again, they all went back, and then but Ferrari realized hey we got to pit anyway. So then the
Right.
next lap they did bring him in under full green because remember Sonoda took forever to get back to the pits the first time.
Right.
So they went and pitted in the middle, and then when he went out there and parked it and caused a safety car, Leclerc basically in between those two things pitted, so it didn't work out for him. But in the end, Bottas's car broke, so he caused another safety car, which did kind of take a little bit of this out of like make the Yuki one a little bit less important, and that's where Mercedes threw the race away, in my opinion. Just
Oh yeah.
so well, this is the
Well,
thing,
with Hamilton for sure.
so here's the thing, right? Max was so fast. The only reason Mercedes was competing with him is because they got their strategy right, and everyone else screwed up.
Right.
Everyone else started on the softs, to protect in the first few laps. Mercedes like forget that. They started on the mediums, so they had basically had to do one pit stop less. Um, so that is where their advantage came from, which is why they were in play at the top.
Right.
So I don't know though that there's a strategy, whether there was no safety cars, whether they'd done something different with all of these strategies where they'd actually win. The issue with what they did is the one thing they had was the two cars at the front. They had that track position. Now, everyone knows they're on used mediums. Those are going to be slower, and they're already slower in the Red Bull anyway. So
Right.
they're basically a sitting duck there. So you have to make that decision as a team. Are we going to try and win this race? Or we can easily pit, go onto the soft tires, and finish second and third. Hamilton second, Russell third, if we do that. Those are your options. You either because there's no way you're winning the race if you pit one of those two cars and not the other one. Because Max one-on-one with a slower car on worse tires, it's over. You
Right.
need the second car to block, hold him up, try to get a gap somewhere, and then have him have to make that back up. Now, would that have worked? Probably not.
Right.
He was way too fast.
Do
By
you
the end of
think?
the race, he had opened up like a 4 or 5 second gap.
Do you think it was a little bit of I mean, do you think it was a little fault, slightly of Hamilton as well, not pitting, or did
No,
Mercedes just
no,
say stay out there?
no.
Like,
They told them
you
both
know
to
what I
stay
mean?
out there.
Yeah.
And
So
then
smart by Russell to say, "Hey, what the
I
hell? I'm
don't,
gonna
I
come in on
don't, I
off."
don't, I don't. I think it's dumb by Mercedes. I think Russell saying these tires, I don't want to be on them. He's running his race. That's fine.
Yeah.
Mercedes needs to have the bigger picture in mind. They either pit both or pit none of them.
Right.
Because splitting the strategy at that point guaranteed that they weren't going to win the race. Which, if you know you're not going to win the race, then just put the soft tires on both the cars.
So they
So there
should have
was no
just double
reason to split
stacked right
them.
there.
Yeah, they could have double stacked them, or they could have left them both out and tried to do some kind of a blocking maneuver to try and actually win the race, which I don't think would have worked, and they
Right.
would have ended up probably second and third or third and fourth. But by putting Russell in, they guaranteed they were going to finish second and way further back.
Right.
And that was why it was. And that's why Hamilton was so mad. Not to mention he's the lead car, so if you're going to put one on the faster strategy, it should be him. They
Right.
screwed him, and that's why he
Yeah.
was so upset. Like that was not the right move. They could have put him on the softs, and he would have been second, Russell third, and they would have watched Max pull away anyway, and they would have
Right.
finished second and third. Or they could have left them both on mediums, probably lost anyway, but at least taken a shot at winning it. They did neither, and
Right.
that's why he was upset. And Russell made the right call for him, but the team's got to have a team structure there where you're saying no. Your
Right.
job right now is to block Max so Hamilton can win the race. That is Russell's job there. It's not to finish as high as Russell can.
Um, one more thing that I kind of want to
And you
touch
saw that
upon.
actually you saw that with Checo too. Understanding that at that before any of the safety cars happened, understanding that Max was actually racing Hamilton, even though they weren't next to each other. That Hamilton was putting in these fastest laps and eating up the time, so that way when Max was going to pit, he was going to come out behind Hamilton. Like you saw how hard Checo sacrificed his tires and his lap times to block up Hamilton on purpose because he knows that's the race. When Russell comes up to Checo, just let him go through basically because that's not who we're racing. And you got to use your number two driver like that. And
Not only
Hamilton
did
was
they do
faster than
that,
Russell
they
all
they pitted
weekend.
they pitted Checo early to go on those hards to make
Yeah, to
sure that
get
they
the
were working.
get the
Yeah.
data, make sure they wouldn't be a bad tire. Like yeah, that's what you got to do with your second driver. And they
Right.
should have if anything, they should have pitted Lewis onto the softs and told Russell to basically hold Max up as much as possible so maybe Lewis can get back around him or something. Like if you're gonna do any kind of split strategy, you would do that because what ended up happening is Russell was not fast enough. He took too long. He took several laps to pass Hamilton, even though same car with much better tires.
Yeah.
And by the time he got past him, he was like 4 or 5 seconds behind Max.
I
It was game over.
I think it would have been tough because I think that Russell, he's got a little bit of that, cockiness to him. I don't know if he would have been down with that. I don't know. It was just
Well, so
you know what I
correct, and
mean.
I
You
wouldn't
know what I
expect
mean?
him to be down with it. I expect him to be
Yeah.
like, "What the f?" It
Right.
doesn't matter.
Right.
So again, they had a choice to make. Clearly, going onto the sauce for both cars is you're going to probably finish second and third,
Right.
and that's kind of job done. If that's your goal, you put them both on sauce. If you're going to try like maybe we can miraculously win this race, we are in front. You leave them out there. By splitting it, it's where they basically guaranteed neither of those things happen. And the way that they did it was they screwed the lead driver, which is something you don't generally do. Like if Russell was in second and Hamilton was in third, I'd be saying the same thing with the opposite.
Right.
If they had like put Hamilton on the softs and just let him, okay, you take second, and we're gonna screw the guy in front. Like it's the same thing the other way around. In this instance, they don't really have a number one driver this year because frankly the car's not good enough.
Right.
So it's whoever's got the best position on that given race.
I agree.
And it was clearly Hamilton this time, and they instead gave the preferable strategy to Russell.
Now let me ask you this question, right? Kind of switching gears slightly, but still staying on that topic per se. But are you more surprised with the pace that, because let's be honest, obviously Red Bull Max was the class of this all, right? There's nobody that can kind of keep up with him. However, are you more impressed with the pace that Mercedes had, or more disappointed with the pace that Ferrari did not have in this race? And we'll get into a little bit more of Ferrari stuff, but what do you think about that?
It's probably a little bit of both. Yeah, I don't know where Ferrari was right there in qualifying, and the race pace was not there at all. So that's
And it was
probably
the
the bigger
opposite for
disappointment.
Mercedes, right?
Yeah, but the thing with the Mercedes, Russell had a bad qualifying. Hamilton was actually only 3 tenths off, so they had pace all weekend.
Right.
Now both of the Ferraris were within a tenth, which is why you didn't expect them to drop back like that. But
Right.
but again, it's so hard to tell just because Ferrari was also on the wrong strategy, right? They started on softs, they had to do an extra pit
Yeah.
stop,
God knows they were.
and then you saw what they did to Sainz. They got him
Yeah.
penalized. They took away, weren't ready for him to pit, didn't have the tires right. Like, I mean, all that stuff happened, but
Uh,
you know yeah, I would say it's probably a bigger disappointment for Ferrari than anything else because in qualifying they showed they should have been on par with Max pace wise, and then the race they weren't even close.
yeah. They
And you
weren't.
do have to wonder when you kind of look at the Red Bull as a car is definitely fast. It's the fastest car we think, and Checo is technically second in the championship, but we've arrived at a situation where it is Max
Yeah.
so far outclassing everyone else. It is not just the car because Checo's not bringing these things home second unless Ferrari makes mistakes.
Right.
He will literally finish this race fourth, fifth, I think fifth
Yeah, I
after
think it was-
Sainz got his penalty.
Right.
And he's sitting there battling with Sainz back. He was having trouble overtaking the Ferrari. So if it wasn't Max in that car, we might have a lot more competitive races. But I feel like that car is better than the other ones, but he's exaggerating the gap
I still
because he's
think
so
that,
much
yeah,
faster.
he's so much better of a driver. Forget about the car. Like you said.
Yeah.
His
He's
driving.
so ridiculously talented that if the car is a tenth of a second faster a lap, he's making it 0.3, 0.4, and that's why he's running away from the field, and everything else is bunching behind because frankly, Leclerc and Sainz are not matching his performances
No.
too. So
And I
there's
think
the
the
car
difference
gap and the
is,
performance gap.
and I think the difference is that when he makes a mistake or if he locks up or if he does something like that, he knows how to kind of correct it so much better and with so much more ease. And we've seen it all season long, right? Even when he spins out, he ends up figuring out a way to still win the race or still stay. I mean, he is absolutely the best driver right now in the world. I mean, I don't think there's
Well, I think the
much
only one.
argument about
Well,
that.
he definitely is, and he's gonna be the two-time consecutive world champion, probably in a few races at this rate. He'll clinch it, but I think it is. It is kind of telling that the only one that can really challenge him skills-wise is still Hamilton, and that's why anytime that Mercedes is competitive, you see, oh, this guy's there was I can't remember which race it was where if the Mercedes had a few more laps, he might have passed Max at the end, and he ended up finishing second. It's he's the only one that can also. Because what happens is, and you see this with the other drivers, you mentioned when Max locks up or makes a mistake, but those are so rare. And what he can do and what Hamilton can also do with given the right equipment, which no one else in the grid is able to do, is just string together 10 to 15 clean laps on the limit. Right? Everyone else, when they're pushing on the limit, invariably within a lap or two, you see them lock a tire up or run wide and just ruin. But Max's ability to, I mean, look how quickly George Russell was on the same tires. I mean, he immediately opened a 4 second gap and then just coasted. It was not. And yeah, the Red Bull's faster, but a lot of that's the driver too.
Yeah.
If that was Checo, that wouldn't have happened.
Right.
And I think it's that car driver combination that's why the gap looks so big at this point. Because I feel like if you put Max on the Ferrari, I feel like the gap will be a lot closer than it's showing up right now.
Oh,
I think
absolutely.
I also think um, the other issue that is hampering Ferrari is frankly they're just demoralized. They've thrown the season away. They were clearly the faster car at the beginning of the season. They messed up race after race after race. Last week it turned into a Q&A session with their drivers on when to pit. This time they screwed up the pits twice. The first one when they weren't ready, which ruined Sainz's
How
race.
embarrassing is that?
I
How
mean,
embarrassing is it that how is your pit guy not, one of your pit guys not ready with the tire?
well,
You have to
they were
wait for him
saying
to
it was
come
a it
around.
was a late pit call or something, but
Yeah, but all three, all the other
either
three were
well
ready.
well well either way, right? So either way, it's a Ferrari mistake because
Yeah,
if it's a late pit call, then you actually just cancel it. Say like, no, you got to go one more lap. We're not ready. Once you allow him to pit, you got to be ready. And then they left the
absolutely.
gun out there. They're probably gonna get fined for that because
Yep.
fortunately Checo's car didn't get damaged, but he ran over it because they left it in the way for some reason. I mean, it was just a
It's
calamity of air.
just
And then when they pitted under the safety car, they unsafe released him into the Alpine and cost him 3 spots, just raw 3 spots on the
yeah,
grid.
and
He finished fifth, and
I'm not gonna blame that on signs. I
no, no,
think
it's
that's
never the
that that's
driver
by
on that. They
himself.
they can't see anything. In
Right.
fact, he did avoid the accident because he caught it out of the corner of his eye when he was pulling out. But no, that's all
Exactly.
the team's got to make that call. They got to know, where the other cars are, and that is one of the problems with pitting under a safety car, is you
Right.
do bunch up and you have
Yep.
to wait for cars to clear. So you do often have to just sit in your pit box and wait for cars to go around, like get past you to get a gap to release into, especially when you pit later in the safety car window. Like when Max immediately, again, Red Bull was on it as they usually are. Safety car, he immediately went in, so he was able to pit and come out before it piled up. Once the safety car actually bunches the field up, if you pit at that point, you're going to end up in other cars coming into the pits right behind you and releasing right in front of you, and you got to wait for a gap then, so it slows you down pretty significantly. And in this case, because of where Bottas's car was, they
Right.
actually were running the safety car through the pit lane, which is when some of the cars that weren't going to pit said, "Hey, it's right here. Let's go ahead and do it because we don't have to go down the pit lane and lose that kind of position because it's obviously faster to go around, even under safety car speed, faster to go around the normal track. So you save even more time. So they dove in, and that's when signs caused the
Well,
problem. And even if cars weren't pitting, they were still in the pit lane because the
right.
safety car was taking them through there. So there wasn't a great window to release them into, but it's still a major mistake. That's the only team that did that. So
By the way, Checo and Leclerc are now tied for second in the drivers' championship
well, that's
with
actually an,
201
an
points.
improvement for Ferrari because Checo had passed him. But I mean that I think at this point, like I think Ferrari just the will to live has been
Listen,
sucked
listen.
out of them.
But think about this for a second. How ignorant, how in denial is Binotto and the whole entire team that they're saying that they don't need changes, that they don't need any changes when they're clearly continuously every single week making mistakes, and not only huge mistakes, but the small ones that shouldn't. I mean, the pit, right? The pit situation, that issue, that's something that is small, but at the same time, it's going to cost you so much. And we saw it. Like it was a 12-second pit stop. Like this is ridiculous that they continuously make these mistakes and there's no changes. There needs to be a complete
I think I
overhaul,
think
if you
there I
ask
think
me.
there will I think I'd be surprised if there are not significant changes at
And I
the
get it.
end of
You
the
can't
year.
really say it right there. Hey, we need to change
Well, I
everything,
think he
right?
might be the one going. So
Yeah, true.
I would be pretty surprised if there are not changes at the top of that team at this point. And I think it's impacted the drivers too and their performances. I don't think they're really, you know,
Yeah, you can tell they're a little bit,
they're
like
in
you
like a
said,
funk,
demoralized.
right?
Yeah,
They're almost
yeah,
like in a
for sure.
funk now. It's just because they've thrown away so much, and then I think it's one too many for them. They're like, you know what is the
You
point?
get tired of it, man. You get
Yeah.
tired of having the same issues, and sometimes. Don't get me wrong. I think Leclerc and Sainz have made their own mistakes, but not enough for them to be in this position. I think that the team really needs to kind of, you know, take a look and see what the hell's going on there, and fix some things and change some things if they want to continue to be competitive. Because to be quite honest with you, I mean, Mercedes is right on their heels, and I don't know if they're going to get. I mean, they're just getting better and better and better every race. So
Well, I
I
think
wouldn't be
from
surprised to see them drop to third if they continue to screw up this much.
well, I mean, they'd have to really make a lot. So this was
Well, I mean, is that out of the realm of possibility
I
right now
think
with the
so
seat?
to that level, just because I still think Mercedes' car isn't very good. I think
Yeah,
there's certain tracks that they run better on where there's less straights and opportunities for them to porpoise, and I think this was one of those.
right.
When we looked at the track, we're like, wow, it's really twisty. That should help Mercedes because
Yeah,
they're
and they
worse in a
look good,
straight
and they
line. And
look good.
yeah. So even they obviously got the strategy right, which is why they were in play to maybe win the race. But
Right.
even in qualifying, they were much closer. If you
Yeah.
look at Spa last week, where they're almost like a second off to qualify. Well, at least Hamilton was point 0.3 off. Russell was pretty far back from him.
Yeah.
But so there are certain tracks where Mercedes will be competitive. The Ferrari is competitive everywhere, and they
Right.
just keep making mistakes. So I think it
So
would be very difficult for Mercedes to actually finish second. But the fact that we're even talking about this when for the first half of the
exactly.
season the Ferrari was the fastest car. It was only recently where the Red Bull really there's a string in the middle of the season where Red Bull essentially won 5 or 6 races in a row where they were not even the fastest car.
Yep.
And I think that's where when Ferrari looks back on this, that's where they needed to make the ground up so that they're in the lead at this point. Because at this point, no one's touching Max. So I think, if they had won enough of those races and built up something of a lead, they'd have that cushion now to maybe fight to the end, bring some more upgrades, and try to catch back up. But at this point, I
They
mean,
need to start looking at 2023
I
for
think
Ferrari.
everyone needs to,
Yeah.
including probably Red Bull. They don't need to develop this car further. This is done. So I think
Right.
everyone's going to kind of be looking at the 2023.
Yep, yep. Well, it's going to be interesting on Wednesday because we'll be having this conversation a little more in depth with the whole crew, but talking a little bit about the midfield. Midfield was exciting again. Alpine looks like it's
Well, so here's the thing. All of that. So Alpine was bad this weekend,
they were
and because of all the safety cars, they found themselves in
because
up near the front again, and they opened up a further gap to McLaren thanks to Daniel Ricciardo putting his.
Norris did all right. He did okay.
Norris was actually without the
Yeah,
safety cars was probably going to finish fifth or sixth
right.
because he was the other car up near the front that was on the right strategy. And then when the safety cars happened, it basically allowed the teams that were on the wrong strategy to get back onto the right strategy.
Right.
So yeah, so it ended up with both Ocon and Alonso in the points. Um, Alonso ahead of Norris, and Ricardo finished like 17th or
Yeah, poor guy.
something.
Poor
Just
guy.
like
But I think it's going to be the same. I think it's going to be the same story and what we can expect for Monza. This is going to be Red Bull's
yeah,
Red Bull's to lose.
Monza is going to be a
It's,
complete Red Bull domination. That is
yeah,
a power circuit. It's all just straights and I think Mercedes is gonna have a rough time there
yeah.
too.
Unless Mercedes and Ferrari,
Maybe Ferrari
I
might
don't
have
know.
something in the bag. I still feel they ran the wrong setup at Spa and it exaggerated the gap. They had too much downforce on the car.
Right.
But Monza is all power. Like I can't imagine anyone touching that Red Bull.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting.
It's a power circuit. This is gonna be
Yeah.
I feel like a wipeout.
This is we're gonna be talking about third P3, even maybe P2 if Ferrari kind of figures it out, but it's gonna be a P3 P4 thing, right? We're gonna
Yeah,
see
no,
who can finish
Max
this.
will probably win by 25 seconds.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
no, I mean
probably.
that track is like perfect for the Red Bull. It's just power. Very few turns. Even the turns that are there are mostly high speed.
Yep.
So it is. Yeah, it sets up, and it's going to be right in front of the Ferrari fans, and it's going to get ugly.
How you holding up today, man? You hanging in there?
Oh yeah, I'm good. I'm
You're
good.
good. You're fresh, refreshed
Yeah,
after
yeah.
yesterday's shellacking. All right. Well,
I still got to rewatch that game.
yeah, so do I. So do I. Make sure you guys keep it locked here on Wednesday nights at 9. Actually, we're going to be going on Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. A little bit earlier time start time for us this Wednesday, 8:30 p.m. Make sure you check us out on the Five Reasons Sports YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter at F1_5 Reasons. Hitting the apex, make sure you subscribe, smash the like button. We'll be on every Wednesday night now, starting at an earlier time, but this Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Make sure you keep it locked, and we'll see you guys on Wednesday night.